Wedding planning is not fun. And the people that enjoy wedding planning, kudos to you, because this is not my ministry. This is not what I'm supposed to do. I thought I was semi type A. I am very much type B. And this is not for type B people. But anyway, hi guys, and welcome back to the wedding series. The wedding series. Is there a way to do that? Oh, the wedding series. We'll figure that out. Full transparency, I recorded this intro and I have a habit, a very bad habit, of looking down and avoiding eye contact in real life and apparently on camera. So here we are, recording again, and I'm just hoping that this take is a lot for my sanity. Hi, if you're new here, which you are, I have no subscribers. If you're new here, I'm Jasmine. I am a wedding photographer based in Chicago. My company's name is jlauryn Photography. We've been operating now for almost 10 years. And we do weddings, we do lifestyle shoots, branding shoots. But my bread and butter and what I love to do most is wedding photography. And if you're here, you've already guessed by now because we've already called it the wedding series. I recently got engaged to the most amazing person in the entire world, my fiance, John. And we are a little unconventional because we just got engaged this past May. It's now July, and we're getting married in October. Now, that's for the people that are good at math and quick. That's 5 months from engagement to wedding. Do I recommend that short of an engagement? Yeah, if you could swing it, especially if you're eloping or doing a courthouse, that's fine. We're not doing that. We're doing a full-fledged wedding. Yes, so I am in probably the most challenging stretch of time in my entire life in terms of planning a huge scale event in a very small amount of time. And they don't tell you before you get engaged that being a bride is incredibly full of pressure.
The pressure is getting worse. Hey.
It is an experience that it's not for the weak. Especially if you are somebody that doesn't like a lot of attention on you and somebody that is more of a behind the scenes person. I am discovering I'm not a type A person. I'd call myself in between a type A and type B. I like things to be good and precise, but I have a creative mind, so things can be all over the place sometimes. But yeah, getting engaged and getting married within 5 months, don't recommend to everybody, but if you want to do it, do it. I'm doing it with my fiance, and I decided to document the journey, so here we are. Yeah. Anywho, so if you're tuning in today, we are talking about wedding venues, and in particular, how John and I found the perfect venue for us. And the whole reason why we were able to do this in such a short amount of time is we were able to find a fantastic venue. And it was kind of contingent on time as well. Me being a wedding photographer, and as you'll learn later, John wanting to get married particularly soon, we had a limited amount of time to figure out when we could get married. And I'm not the kind of person that wants to be engaged for a year or 2 years, so it makes sense that we're doing it quickly. But, oh, baby, like I said, not for the weak of, not for the faint of heart. A year is a good amount of time, and we'll get into that story again. But because I'm a wedding photographer, my weekends are pretty stacked out. John wanted to get married this year. You'll hear about that later. So we only had a limited amount of dates that we could choose from, and the venue was available, and we went for it. So more on that later. But in this video, we are going to talk about, one, how I found my venue. Two, we're going to give you guys some, well, I talk we. I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks from the perspective of a wedding photographer on how to find the perfect venue for you. And let me tell you why wedding venues are important to talk about. Did you know most couples, the wedding venue is going to be the largest chunk of money that you are spending on your wedding day? That and catering. So, not only is it super important because it's where most of your money is going, it's also important in dictating how your guest experience is going to be. And it can make or break the experience. So, it's really important to get this right the first go and to make sure that it aligns with all your needs and wants from the get go, because trying to change a venue is not fun. Trust me. I haven't had to do it, but I've had couples have to do it. It's not fun at all. And everything is kind of contingent on the venue that you get. So it's important to get this right. It's important to discuss this with your partner. If you have a planner, you're in great shape, especially if you booked a planner before your wedding, before you went shopping for venues. You're in really good shape because they could help you with all this. But if you're doing this without a planner to start, I have some tips for you to make sure that you're finding a venue that is in line with what you need and what you'd like. Buckle up. I'm excited to start this little journey with you guys. Hopefully, you stick around. Hopefully, you guys like my personality. And hopefully, I learn how to look into the camera while doing these intros and just talking to the camera in general. But listen in, I'm going to tell you a little bit about how John and I found our venue and give you the tips that I think you need in order to find the perfect venue for you. I'm blaming my fiance for why we're getting married in 2.5. We're planning a wedding this quickly.
You say it like that, no, it's not true.
It is true.
You asked me when I would like to get married, and you said, would you want to get married this year? I said, that would be nice, ideally. I know it's a lot, but because of time and because we're older. But I said, I basically just said in a perfect world, yeah, this year would be nice. And you're like, he wants to get married this year.
No, that isn't true. Like, okay, yeah, that is true.
My fiance loosely suggested that we should, if we could, it'd be nice to get married this year. Does that sound better to you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So my fiance loosely suggested that he would, in a perfect world, like to get married this year. He told me this in February. And if you know anything about the wedding industry, you know anything about weddings in general, most people are engaged for at least a year. Engagements I've seen have been 12 to 18 months, usually, sometimes pushing into 24 months. When he told me this in February, we were not even engaged. So he told me this after we had just came back from the most incredible retreat experience with a fellowship group that we are a part of. This group hosts a worship event that is called The Tent, that we were heavily involved in organizing and providing a space for. And they graciously invited us to join their retreat that was scheduled for February. The worship night was in January. The retreat was happening that February. It was located in a Airbnb rental in Michigan. And it was just 13 of us in a house, and we were able to eat together, worship, fellowship. We played trivia games. We just really got to get into the word together, and it was just a very spirit filling weekend, and it was just so incredible. And Jonathan and I really enjoyed ourselves there. So on the way back, we were driving home, going actually to church because the retreat ended on a Sunday. So that Sunday morning, we were driving from Michigan to Wisconsin to go to church. And so we had about a 4-hour drive. And we're casually talking about how, oh my gosh, we loved that retreat. How awesome would it be to have a wedding that felt like that? How awesome would it be to have a wedding that feels like the tent, our worship night service that we do? And yeah, we just were really feeling it. We were in the spirit, we were happy. And then John casually suggests that in a perfect world, he would ideally like to get married this year. And I was just like, baby, that's not how this works. That's not how it works. That's not how things go. So, but I wanted to, because honestly, if I'm being fully transparent, I wanted to get married quicker rather than later too. John and I are not old, but we want to start a family. We want to we're just really excited to be married to each other, even at that time. I feel like we got together. I think we got together and knew within like a couple of weeks that we wanted to be married to each other. So for us, it feels like we've been together forever. We met in 2023 and we just were excited to get married. So in the ideal world, I wanted to get married too this year, but I do blame it on him because, man. So this was February. We weren't engaged, but I tell my sister, who also helps me run my photography business, that John would like to get married this year. And I don't think it's a terrible idea, but we live in Chicago, so winter is out of the question. And that doesn't give us a lot of time frame to figure out when we were going to get married. So my sister and I decided, okay, it's time to start planning a wedding now, even though I'm not even remotely engaged. It's fine. It will all work out. We know that it's happening someday. So we're going to start looking into locations. Now, I have always wanted to get married at originally, I've always wanted like an estate backyard wedding feel. I love the idea of getting married outside and it being al fresco and just like, I love a garden feel. I'm not really a nature girl, but I love outdoor and just natural light, being out inside for a wedding. That's always how I pictured my wedding. I was vacillating over the idea of doing either like finding a random field to get married in or finding a house with a lot of acreage to get married in. My sister and I started looking for rentals inspired by the retreat that we were just on to find a house that was big enough to accommodate a large amount of guests. And also, we wanted, more importantly, for the house to have a lot of acreage. Not thinking we would be able to find something in Illinois or close to Chicago with that. So we were looking in a lot of areas in the South. John's family is from Georgia and Alabama, so we were looking in places down there. Usually you could find something cheaper in those areas too, so we were looking for that. I love New Orleans. We were looking in Louisiana for some things. I have some friends, John and I both have friends in Texas, so we were looking in Texas too. And we happened upon a house that was actually in Illinois. And it was, out of all the houses that we looked at, it was actually the the best one that we saw. And it happened to be in Illinois. And I always thought, oh, we might have to do a destination because we're trying to do it this year and we might have to go into the winter time. So to find a house in Illinois and all the short-term rentals and Airbnbs that we were looking at, they allowed parties. And I'm going to get into that in a second. But when you're looking for a short-term rental, you want to look for something that is, they let you have parties, because I've seen horror stories with people renting places, being dishonest about what they were going to do, and throwing parties and getting kicked out, and you just don't want that. So you got to make sure up front that they allow that. So that's what we were looking for. We found this Morris property, and a pro tip that I recommend to anybody booking anything, events, anything. If you're looking on Airbnb or you're looking on Vrbo or you're looking on any of those short-term rental websites, if you could get a hold of who owns the house, reach out to them directly. Usually when you do that, you're able to get a better deal on the space, because you got to think about it. Airbnb takes a cut of their profit, and all of these different platforms, they're made so that they're easier to find, but they're taking a significant cut out of the profits for most of these house owners. So it's always going to be best to go directly to the source. And you usually get to bypass those fees that Airbnb is charging the owner of the house. So I went on a mad search. I looked all over the Airbnb listing and I was like, who owns this house? And I was able to scroll down and find the owner, and it was this company called Book of Memory. And I was like, okay, Book of Memory. That's who owned this house. So let me Google search real quick, Book of Memory. And I was able to find a website. And there was the property along with 14 other properties. So I was like, oh, awesome. This is a company that like has a bunch of short-term rentals. And they didn't have a number on their website to contact, because I wanted to, you could put in a contact like inquiry form, but I wanted to get a more immediate response. I was looking for a number. So I was able to locate that after doing a little bit more digging. Found a number, called it. A man answers. He's like, hi. And I'm like, hi, do you happen to own the property in Morris called Lakeview Manor? And he was like, yes, that's us. And I was like, oh, awesome. Your property is beautiful. I was just looking around because, transparency, I am a wedding photographer here in Chicago. And I have couples and planners that are always looking for new locations to either get married or host an event. And your space is amazing. I would love to know more about your event policies and how that works. And he explained to me that Book of Memory, they actually founded their business on the premise that they do allow events at their short-term rental properties. And that's their big like mission, to allow events, have people have memories. Most Airbnbs, Verbos, places like that, apart from Pure Space, most places require that you don't host parties at their spaces. So to have this space, or they built that company so that it kind of counteracts that, and you're allowed to have events, and they actually encourage it. So I was like, oh my gosh, that's awesome. I love to recommend you to like couples and planners that I know. And another full transparency moment, I'm actually looking for venues myself. So I would actually love to view your property, and you might, you guys are kind of on my list for venues that I'm looking at. And they were like, oh, okay, well, if you recommend us to some of your couples, we're happy to like accommodate them for sure, and possibly give them a discount. And I was like, oh, well, I can't give you guys I can't give you guys a recommendation if I haven't seen the property. So would I be able to see the property? And he was able to set up a private viewing of the property for me. And we were able to, my sister and I were able to view the property, and it was better in person. The pictures didn't do it justice. So it was perfect for what John and I had been envisioning. I could just see our families there and staying there for the weekend, being able to fellowship together the night before, having the welcome dinner there, having the ceremony there on the grounds. And I was just like, it's perfect. So did the tour, got back to the guys a little bit later, about a few weeks later, and I was like, Kay, I think I'm really interested in using you guys for my wedding. And I was saying this to them before I was engaged, which is hilarious to think back on. But um, I think you guys are amazing. I love the property. I love um, the premise of your business model. And so, yeah, that's how we found our venue. And I am going to throw in some B roll of our wedding venue space so that you could see it. And it's a short-term rental. Book of Memory is the company that owns these properties. The property that I'm getting married at, they own a bunch of other properties as well. And true to what he said on the phone, he has been gracious enough to give anybody who takes my recommendation to look into these guys. And if you end up wanting to book one of their properties, they are willing to give you guys a wonderful discount with the coupon code that is on the display. Probably just going to be jlauryn. Or if you use the link down in the description box below, they'll be able to give you guys a pretty decent 10% discount off of the property. So if you look at their stuff and you want to host an event there and they have properties in Texas, Georgia, Indiana. They have 3 properties in Illinois. I think they have one in Palm Springs. So check them out because they have good stuff. But yeah, if you use the coupon code or if you use the link in the description, you guys can get 10% off. I'm so excited to have my wedding there. I'm excited to show you guys more about the property and just tell you how we're going to dress this place up and how we're going to work through it and work with it. But that's actually one of my biggest tips. I don't think your wedding has to look like anybody else's. And if you are one of those adventurous brides that wants to do things a little bit different, I think renting a short-term rental for your wedding, I think that is the best way to not only save a bit because you're throwing in accommodations with a wedding venue, but to just create an experience. You're able to do whatever you want, mold the space however you want with a rental like that. And traditional wedding venues are great as well. But I recommend, if you don't mind putting in a little bit more work, because it is a little bit more work than a wedding venue sometimes. If you don't mind that and you want the flexibility and you want the versatility, I recommend getting a short-term rental for your wedding and giving that a try. And I might do a video on tips and tricks on what to do when you're doing that for a wedding, having a short-term rental or Airbnb or Vrbo. I'll definitely make a video on how to do it, what to do, what not to do. But I highly recommend giving it a try, especially if you're unconventional and you don't want your wedding to look like, if you just want to curate your own experience, I highly recommend. Yeah, I think we should get into some tips. So I have a list of 7 tips that I think you should consider when looking for the perfect wedding venue. And we're going to start with a preliminary, this is what you need to do before you even consider looking at venues or just shopping around. 1, you got to consider, what is my guest count looking like? And when I tell you that is the hardest part of wedding planning, at least that's been the hardest part for us so far, is narrowing down a guest list. You have to do that before you start because it's a lot. It's a lot. It's very political. I'll talk about guest lists in another video, but get your guest count together and understand, okay, how many people are we anticipating on inviting? The other thing you need to do before you start looking is you got to figure out a rough budget and be realistic. I mentioned before that most couples become venue poor because they're not considering things like, do I have to bring things into the venue or is it all inclusive? Do I have to pay for rentals, different things? Do I need to pay for staff? Is catering included? Is catering not included? Do I have restrictions on who I could bring in for catering? All those things add up as costs that are hidden in venues. So you got to figure out, okay, what budget am I working with so that you could have a clue on how much wiggle room you have? Because most people, depending on if it includes catering or not, your venue is taking up 30, 40, sometimes 50 to 60% of your whole wedding cost. So I'd rather you be more towards the 30 versus the 60 And to do that, you have to really be strategic on, okay, does this venue have everything I need, or do I need to put stuff into it? So we're going to talk about that a little bit soon. Okay, so tip number 1, I want you to consider the feeling and the atmosphere that you want to create. I recommend just sitting down with your partner and figuring out, okay, kind of what John and I did. We were talking about, okay, what do we want it to feel like? What do we want it to look like? How do we want just to feel on that day? And we were really inspired by the retreat. We were really inspired by the tent that we hosted or helped host. So I recommend that that's the first thing you do. You figure out, how do you want everything to feel? And that's going to be really important when considering what venue you want to go with. The second thing, I want you to map out the guest experience, the guest journey. When are they coming in? What is the experience when they come in? What are they going to see first? Where are they going to be? Are they going to be outside? Are they going to be inside? Are we using multiple spaces? Are we only using one space? What does this venue provide? I think, I think I will die on this hill. Your guest experience should be top priority. I know a lot of people are like, well, it's about me. It's my day. I think you as a person putting on a wedding or having a wedding are creating an environment and hosting a party for guests. You are a huge host of a beautiful event, and I think you need to consider your guest first. And I think that experience is important. So consider, how is it going to feel? Where are they going to be? Think about the feeling and the atmosphere that you want to create, and then walk through the space, and how is it going to feel when they're walking through these different spaces? Is it going to be hot? Is there shade? Is it, you just have to really think about, if I was a wedding guest at this venue, would I be wowed? Would I be comfortable? Think about those things, because it's very important. Okay, and this is the photographer in me. Tip number 3, I want you to consider lighting. Please, if you care at all about the kind of photos you're going to get, or the kind of video you're going to get, or the kind of content you're going to get, please consider the lighting of a venue, because if it doesn't provide its own lighting, you might need to bring stuff in, because it might feel beautiful, but it might not look beautiful. And if you don't care about that, that's fine. But if you're getting married in a lofted space and there's little natural light, but you love a light and airy feel, you're going to be very disappointed when you get your photos. So that's just something you have to really consider when looking at your venue. I want you to walk through, look at the light. Is this what I want? And sometimes people like a more moody vibe, and that's fine too. Is that what this space is giving? A lot of this is going to depend on how the photos are going to depend on the photographer you get as well, and the videographers that you get, and that they know what they're doing in any space. Because if you get a good photographer or videographer and they know what they're doing, they can make most things work out. But a space can't give what a space doesn't have. So you have to really consider, okay, what does the space have to offer? What can realistically be done in this space? Tying into that, what is the overall aesthetic of your vibe? Tip number 4, what is the aesthetic? What are we going for? What's the vibes? What do we want? This ethereal garden? Do we want more of that rugged, vintage, industrial? Like what is the vibe? What are we going for? And does this venue offer that? I've seen it where people have an aesthetic, but they pick a venue that it's just the two don't match, and they have to match. So you really have to think about, okay, what aesthetic are we going for? I recommend, and I always recommend, slide decks, mood boards, Pinterest. Look at all of it. Does this work? Can I see this space transforming to the overall aesthetic of the wedding that we are looking for. Okay, tip number 5. What are the restrictions on sound? And when I'm talking about that, I mean, does this area have a sound curfew? And what is it? Because if you're having a wedding and you guys are ragers, you want to have your wedding super late into the night, and this place is like, oh, sorry, you have to be done by 9:30, you're going to be really upset. And if you don't ask those questions before the wedding starts, or if you don't ask those questions during your walkthroughs or your visits to these venues, you're going to be very disappointed when they tell you, oh, your party has to end at 9:30 and you have nowhere else to go. So really consider, okay, am I having a night rager? Am I okay with having my wedding end at 9:30? You really have to consider that when looking at venues. Okay, number 6. And this kind of ties into number 5, but what is the flexibility with this venue? I'll say this. Traditional wedding venues usually have more rules, and every venue is different, but there are some venues that can restrict who you hire as vendors. For instance, there are some venues that only work with certain caterers. There are some venues that only work with certain lighting companies, certain design companies. So you really have to consider, it's usually catering that these venues are having restrictions on or have a list of preferred vendors that they want you to use. So you really have to consider that, because imagine you book your dream wedding venue and they're like, you have to use this caterer, and this caterer costs way out of your price range to make your budget now push into that it's 70% of your whole entire original budget, because you could only use these handful of caterers and they're all very high in price. So consider that and know your options. And tying into that, some venues are all inclusive, and some venues are bare bones, you have nothing. So in your walkthroughs, in your first looks at these places, ask all the questions. What do you guys include? What don't you include? Consider all those things, because those are the things that really trip people up when they're looking at venues. They're like, I don't know where all the money went, because all of a sudden I have to dress this whole venue or equip it with the rentals, with catering, with lighting, everything. So you just really have to consider, okay, what do I want? Do I want something that's just packaged nicely in a box for me, or do I want to have it more customizable that I could choose whatever I want? So those are my top tips when looking for a wedding venue. Here is a comprehensive list of different kinds of wedding venue archetype. These are the venues that you could consider for your wedding. So first of all, you got a traditional church or a chapel. And I think I'm going to do a whole nother video I'm going to go more into depth about the different venues that you get married at, just to give you guys vibes. I'll give you pros and cons from the perspective of the photographer as well. I think that would be helpful. But you have a traditional church, you have a hotel ballroom or a resort. A lot of resorts are used if you're getting married at a destination wedding or something like that. You have private estate if you're lucky enough to be rich and have a beautiful, just massive mansion or house or a large plot of property. You could always get married there. You could also, if you don't own those things and you aren't rich, you could always rent a property like John and I are doing for our wedding. You use Airbnb, you could use Vrbo. We call them short-term rentals instead of Airbnbs or Vrbos, because, like I said, the best thing to do if you are doing a Airbnb or short-term rental in general is to look for the actual owner or company of the house, because then you are going to avoid platform fees. Consider that. Another thing that you can consider are historical mansions or museums. A lot of the like French chateaus, or if you go to Tuscany, those Euro style, those are all destination type of venues. And there's some like old English or just old European architecture venues. There's some in the States. They're more towards like I think the South and Charleston. Charleston has the most beautiful venues. So places like that you could look into as well, or museums. In Chicago, we have the Field Museum, Shed Aquarium, the History Museum. So there's a lot of options there. You always do a winery or a vineyard. You can do a industrial loft or a warehouse if you like that industrial vibe. You have a more outdoorsy nature vibe, you could always go for a botanical garden, an actual, like, someone's just beautiful garden. You go for a conservatory look if you really like that nature feel. Things I've seen in the past also, restaurant. You could do a buyout of a restaurant or just have a private room in the restaurant and do a wedding there. And I've seen a lot of cool ones in New York of people do that. And even Chicago, I've seen some restaurants that have been bought out. You could do a beachfront. That's very popular in like Florida, in California. You could always do a rooftop, some beautiful rooftop. And Chicago has the best rooftop. Let's not lie. Chicago has the best rooftop. So a rooftop wedding is always an option. And that might be a another buyout of a restaurant or a rooftop. Skyline Terrace. You could do a country club, a golf club. They always have lots of acreage. They have that like old money aesthetic feel sometimes. Some golf clubs are nice, some golf clubs are not as nice. So it depends. Some like golf clubs don't allow certain people in places. So be careful about that also. You could do a cultural center, an art gallery, or public parks. So there's a lot of different options that you guys can choose. I'm definitely going to do another video on just the different types of venues you could do and the pros and cons because I feel like that will be super helpful. But I think I'm going to end the video there. I've been rambling for a while. I'm a rambler. I apologize in advance. If you made it this far, thank you so much. If you want to hear more from me, if you like this, if you liked it, only if you liked it, you can like the video and maybe subscribe so that you can hear more about what I'm doing and how we're planning a wedding in 2.5 months. It's gonna be so much fun. It will all work out great. And I'll have to do another video as well about how we're making our wedding very untraditional in terms of like what you expect from a wedding. We're doing things pretty different. So I'm excited to dive into that. That's coming up in more episodes to come. So stick around. Thank you for staying this far, and I hope to see you in the next one. See you later. Bye now.